I wish I could show you my reaction when I saw the numbers, but I wasn't filming. I think I'll just try and breathe through the shock. Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and every single year for the past 3 years in June I count all of my books. I count my books, I count how many I have unread, and I count how many I've read, and I keep track of how my book collection is going, because apparently I like pain in my life. So we're here to revise, and I'm going to tell you how many books I owned last year and how many books I own this year, and we're going to look at what happened in the space of a year. Let's do it. So let me tell you the years 2021. So in 2021, I owned in total 702 books. 456 of those books I'd read, and 246 of those books I had not read. Last year in the video, I said I was not ashamed of those numbers, and I said I just wanted to get my TBR down. So now we are in the year of 2022, and I would like to tell you that I currently own 969 books. 525 of those books I have read, and 444 of those books I have not read. I went from 246 unread books to 444. I have gained 198 books that I have not read. And that doesn't even mean that I've gained 198 books that I have not read, because realistically I've been reading, so kicking books off of my read list, and I've been unhauling books, and I don't know how we got here. But actually I do. So let's talk about it. The biggest difference in my bookish life since 2021 is that I'm currently living in London. In 2021, I was living in the Netherlands, where English is not the first language of the country. English books are more expensive because they're exported. Now I'm in London, where all of the bookshops are in English. You can get book sales and all of those books are English books. They're nowhere near as expensive as English books are in the Netherlands. Moving to London, in terms of my book collection, was not the smartest move. The next thing that happened was gifts, and I just truly mean gifts, because really, if I ask for a gift, or if I'm getting a gift, it's probably going to be a book. Highly likely at Christmas, my friends, my booktube friends, and you guys absolutely spoiled me. I hauled in so many books over Christmas, and then again in January of my birthday, and I just was doing some massive hauling quantities in those times. And gifts are another reason why this collection has grown. In terms of positivity, I've actually been unhauling quite a lot of books. I've done some huge purges of my shelves, but I think that's also contributed to the reason why my read shelf, like the collection of books that I have read from my shelf, has also not been as big. You would think that for reading a whole year, I would have bridged more of a gap, like 456 read books to 525 read books. That equates to, I haven't done the maths ahead of time, but like about 75 books of growth. And I know I read way more than 75 books in the past year. It's just because of the fact that I'm really not that attached to holding on to books that I don't like anymore. I've got enough books, clearly. So if I don't like a book, I'm going to get rid of it. If a book was middle of the road and not that memorable, like a 3-star rating, I'm going to get rid of it. Even if a book was a 4-star read, but I don't think I'm ever going to reread it and I can't find value of keeping it on my shelf, I unhaul it. I've also recently gone through my TBR, and I know I said last year that I was done with unhauling for my TBR. That was clearly a lie, because I've unhauled a lot more books for my TBR that I'm just less excited in. And part of the reason why I was unhauling those books is because I was hauling in so many new books that I'm way more excited for, that some other ones just paled in comparison, and I knew I would never get around to them. So I have been unhauling from my TBR shelf and my unread shelf, which is why the read shelf number is not really where it probably should be, because I just don't keep all of my books anymore. Another thing about moving to London is that there are a lot of UK-based publishers, and I think they've discovered where I am at. So actually, in terms of the, wow, your TBR grew by 198 books, how much money did you spend on those books? Not really that much. First of all, publishers and review copies. I feel really blessed to be able to get that many review copies. that's where a lot of the books are coming in from. As I said before, gifts. And then last but not least, I am a big fan of secondhand shopping. I'm a big fan of Oxfam and charity shops in the UK. I donate a lot of my books there, pretty much all of my books. If they're not going to friends or family, they end up at a charity shop. And because I go to the charity shop to drop them off, I pick up books from the charity shop. So it's so rare for me to buy a book at full price. So actually, even though I read a lot of books and I get a lot of books and I haul a lot of books, I don't actually buy as many books. And also the reason why this number is so big is because I'm a long-term book collector. I can't believe my book collection is almost at the 1,000 book mark. That seems a bit excessive in my head. And I guess I can't take in the full scope of the fact that I own 1,000 books, or nearly 1,000 books, because my books are split up across 2 countries, some home in the Netherlands and some here with me in London. So I guess because I can't see them all in front of me, I don't feel very overwhelmed. So now we face the issue of what am I gonna do to reduce my TBR number, because I don't actually have an issue with having a big TBR. I quite like having a big TBR. I'm such a big mood reader. I like having options. If I want to read a horror book, I want to know that I've got like 3 different types of horrors that I can choose from in every age category. I don't mind having a big TBR, but if my TBR gets past 500 books, I will mind. I will mind if that happens. So I have put in place a book budget. Every time I read a book that I own from my TBR, I get £1.25 into my book spending budget, and I just can't buy more than I can afford with that budget, which means if I read 10 books from my TBR, it means I have £10.25 that I can spend on a book, which equates to either 1 brand new paperback, or if I read a bit more, I can afford 1 brand new hardback. But if I do go to the charity shop, I can afford about 3 books with that amount. So that means I kind of have to read 10 books to even get anywhere like 3 books. And overall, if I follow that, then my TBR should reduce, and I will keep on hauling books probably, so that will also reduce it. The only issue is a book budget does not account for gifts and or books I take in from my friends on hauls, because we trade books often, and or books sent from publishers or review copies. And that is where there's a bit of a flaw in my plan and how I've ended up here. Now last year, one of the things I also did was I counted my Kindle books, because I was thinking that it's just time to also mention my Kindle in these TBR Catastrophe videos, which if you didn't know, the Catastrophe and Olivia's Catastrophe is my TBR. And in 2021, I went through a big clean out of my Kindle because I just wasn't reading as many ebooks anymore, partly because we were still in the pandemic phase, and that meant I was not traveling, and I mostly read Kindle books while traveling, and also just because I felt like I'm hauling a lot of books that were sitting on my Kindle and I just hadn't read for years and years and years. So if you see that previous last year video, you'll see that I've reduced my Kindle TBR by about, my Kindle owned books, sorry, by about 300 books. This time, last year, I owned 350 Kindle books, ebooks, and I didn't separate it into read and unread, but I'm going to do so this year. So as of 2020, I own 184 Kindle ebooks in total. I have read 116 of those ebooks, and I have 68 unread ebooks. And honestly, I am very, very happy and very, very satisfied with that number. My Kindle collection has decreased so much from 350 to 184. That is such a big decrease, and also the majority of them I have read, and my unread number seems reasonable in comparison. And by the time my 2023 video goes up, I actually don't expect these numbers to have shifted very much. I don't buy Kindle ebooks. I only get ebooks if it's a review copy from a publisher or if it's free in a Kindle deal or something. So I actually don't ever buy ebooks, which means my Kindle ebook TBR doesn't really grow that much. And I only ever read it while I'm traveling, or it's just too much hassle to bring a book somewhere. So if I'm like traveling within the UK, maybe, which doesn't happen that often lately. Like it happens 3 to 5 times a year tops, so it's probably not going to shift that much. And I don't think I have anything more to tell you. I was just in so much shock when I saw that I almost had 1,000 books. So the goal that I'm going to set is by this time next year, I want to have stuck to my book budget throughout the whole year. I want to absolutely have stuck to my book budget. I want to have unhauled more books, which is inevitable, it's going to happen. And I also want my TBR to not have exceeded 500. And I know that's not setting a goal of reducing my TBR, which I guess is my ultimate goal. I'll also just throw it on the pile. I want to reduce my TBR number, but I do think it's important to just not exceed a certain number, and that's really my limit. If I hit that number, there's going to be some drastic consequences. Let me know in the comment section down below, do you ever count your books? How many books do you own? Are you brave enough to do that? And yeah, let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!